But here is a man who, one aspect of his life I'm incredibly jealous of, and that is he lives on the northern beaches of Sydney.
Overrated.
Oh, brave. His name is Dave Warner. He has never opened the batting for Australia. He's a much nicer bloke than that. Dave Warner from the suburbs, good morning to you.
Good morning, crew. I've just been down the northern beaches helping my son set up his surfwear stall on for the Manly market. So,
well, there's a chance. Give it a quick plug while you can.
yeah, you might get down your way in the near future. Who knows?
Which one of those northern beaches are you on, Dave?
Oh, we're closest to Manly, so that's the at the southern end.
Manly?
Yeah.
That's in Sydney. That's not northern beaches. Get serious. I thought you were living at Terrigal or...
That's the Central Coast, Rob. After this, Dave, what I might do is spend half an hour with Rob explaining where the northern beaches are.
I don't really want to know because it's New South Wales and we've got this rivalry, Dave. Now, you're crossing the border. Are you bringing some of that rivalry with you? You're going to incite the crowd because that's what a suburban boy would do.
Well, I hope so. I always have a great time in Victoria, and I don't get down there enough. But
we agree.
Melbourne gigs. We've got some regional gigs playing Shepparton, Castlemaine, Creswick, doing some shows in the libraries and some that are a bit more music oriented and fringy. And at the moment, it's Tony Durant and myself, and it looks like Paul Noonan, original suburbs bass player, is going to join us for some of those too. So we're really looking forward to it.
As you should. Now, can I help you out just a little bit with the local knowledge?
Yes.
There is no place in Victoria called Castlemaine. It's called Castlemaine. I know it's Newcastle.
Maine, okay.
But it's Castlemaine. If you call it Castlemaine there, they will drum you out of town. Can I tell you that?
Okay. Well, that's good to get. And I know I've just got to say Shep.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's just up the road from Tat and just down the road from Kai.
Exactly, yeah. Well, his mates grew up in Kai, so...
yeah.
And when you go to Creswick, it's just Creswick.
Yeah.
It's got nothing.
Yeah, so it's not the English pronunciation. I took a punt on Creswick there.
Yeah, no, it's not Creswick.
Yeah.
Creswick.
No, it's not Creswick.
Don't do that.
Yeah. So, Dave, we keep playing the same song every time we introduce you because that's the one that everyone associates you with. But obviously, since that time, which that's 78 or thereabouts, you've done a fair bit. Walk us through some of the stuff around your music after that, and also the fact that you are an award-winning crime novel author.
Well, music-wise, I did a couple of albums. That was on the Suburban Boy. It was on the first album. I actually wrote it in 1972 and finally got it out in 1978. And on the Mugs Game album, and then Free Kicks live album followed, and then a couple more after that. Then I took a break for a while and came back to the little mini album with Greg McCange from Skyhooks that people would know. We did one called Meanwhile in the Suburbs. Mm-hmm. And then did another album, Surplus and Dearth, with my friend Martin Cilia. And I've continued to record. The last full album that I did was about 6 years ago, an album called When. I had a lot of great musicians on that. Jim Magini from Midnight Oil, the late Greedy Smith played on it, and all my usual suburbs guys like Tony Durant and Greg McCange, I mentioned, Martin Cilia. So that was the last one of those, and lately I've been doing a kind of roots country thing called Rude Crew, and we did one album last year. We're about to record the next one this year. So that music-wise, I just keep doing things, and when you're not with a major label, people don't tend to know, and that doesn't matter, like we have a good time, and I think the audiences enjoy themselves when they come along, and those that see us will hear a few tracks from different eras, mainly loaded towards the front end, and then for in terms of writing, ever since about I think 1995 was my first album, first novel, City of Light, and since then I've done 14 crime novels and about 9 or 10 other works of non-fiction, including sports stuff like the Marlon Pickett biography and rock and roll books and things as well, Countdown the Wonder Years and a few things like that. So I've had fun, sport, crime novels is what I tend to write, but and the non-fiction, sport and music.
Because I think people, we associate you now with the northern beaches of Sydney. That's part of Sydney, Rob.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, just on the northern side of the harbour. That's why they're called the northern beaches.
Oh, right.
Manly, places like that. But you have a great love for the proper game of football based on your childhood in West Australia.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a huge football fan, and I'll be doing lots of dedicated football things on this little trip because football's been such a big part of my life, and I think it's such a, it reflects the world so well. So I've got one of my songs, "Where is Jackie Myercheck?" That was written before Brodie brought the Myercheck name back into some fame in recent years. I'll be doing that. I've got a poem, "My First Game of Football." I love AFL. These days I'm a Sydney Swans supporter, and of course I'm still trying to recover from the grand final of last year.
I'm still trying to recover from it too, Dave, but for a slightly different reason. Being a Brisbane Lions supporter.
Oh, well done. Well,
sorry, do I need to bring that up?
From a Sydney point of view, the better. But I'm pleased for Brisbane that they came through and won, and they've had a few, of course, great East Fremantle players, Brisbane, in the past. People like Simon Black.
He could play a bit, couldn't he?
Just a little. Yeah.
It is incredibly how underrated he is, I reckon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Definitely one of the best, if not the best person ever winning the ball out of the centre. Greg Williams, in my eras anyway, Williams was really good. Definitely one of the ultimates.
Because Rob remembers Hayden Bunton, Senior, pulling the ball out of the centre quite regularly.
He was a good player.
When he used to play for Fitzroy back in all those...
I think he had Simon Black covered, but Simon's still very, very good.
Hayden Bunton Jr. a lot, playing for Swan Districts in Western Australia, where he was captain coach, and he'd regularly get 46 possessions a game. But he was a tough bugger. Yeah.
Dave, the intertwining of the storytelling and the music, I quite like it as a night out. I don't go to a lot of music shows, but I recently travelled up the road to Birregurra and saw Carice Eden, and in between her songs there was a story about where the song come from, what it meant, and a little bit about a life. And I think it makes for a really interesting evening when it's not just all music, as much as we appreciate that, but the little intertwining. Is that something as part of your act, your performance, your presentation that you've continued to hone?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it always has been. I've always felt that it's important to give people a bit of an idea about the songs or where they came from. It doesn't have to be every song. But also on the converse is what I do a lot with Tony Durant, my guitarist too. We do a lot of shows in libraries. They go for about an hour. And Victoria's been great for us. We've done a few libraries there, and we're coming up with for a few too on this trip. And on that one, while we primarily talk about, I talk about the books and how they were created and some of the characters, but then some of the books also have relation to songs. So we intersperse our talks with the books with music, and I think that also helps, because people go along for an author talk and they get talked at for 45, 50 minutes. That's a lot on your concentration, even if it's interesting, So we slip a few songs in there, and for example, one of my books, River of Salt, I wrote a song to go in. There's a part in the book where the guy's a guitarist, set in 1963, so it's in that sort of surf guitar type world. And to write the page, I had to kind of come up with a song in my head, and then when I did that, I thought, that's not a bad little song, so I recorded that song, and that No Good Can Come From This, that's called. And so we do stuff like that, and I think you're right, it makes it so much more interesting. And I'm sure many of your listeners will have seen the Bob Dylan film, that's on at the moment, and how great is that to see the origins of some of those songs, or the significance, what lies behind them.
I think I have had a crack at writing a couple of books, but not novels, more stuff around business activity and stuff. And sometimes I think to myself, if I was to write a novel, I'd have to come up with a really good idea. That's the starting point, and then flesh that thing out. I guess you would have situations, and maybe that was an example you just gave us then, where you go, that's a really good idea for a song. Actually, you know what? I could build that out into a book. Is that kind of how it works?
Well, similar. I don't... Yeah, look, it is in a way. For example, I had an idea for one of my books, Before It Breaks, which introduced a character, Dan Clement, who I've now done 4 books in that series, and the idea was I thought I wanted to set this somewhere that was really unique in Australia, and I thought about the Kimberley in Western Australia, and I thought of a song I'd written from my fourth album. This is My Planet, and the song's called Waiting for the Cyclone, and I played that a lot. People really liked it. It's a very atmospheric song, and so I thought when I was writing that book, I thought if I can get the tone and feeling from that song into a book, that will work. And as you say, I think you're right. With a novel, sometimes I do a masterclass or talk to people, and I say, look, especially in the area of crime, genre writing, I guess crime or science fiction, even if you're not a great writer, if you have a great idea, you can have a really successful book. If you just come up with something that's really unique and that grabs people, you can get assistance from other people to help you flesh it out and put it out. But I think it is important with books, to have a great idea if you can do that.
Well, I'm reminded of a song that you may have heard once or twice, Dave, called How to Make Gravy by a chap called Paul Kelly. He's an emerging singer-songwriter coming out of Melbourne, originally Adelaide, but we'll claim him. That song that goes for, 3.5 minutes has been converted by Meg Washington and her partner into a full-on movie that goes for an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it is. It's probably not the strongest plot I've ever seen in a movie, but that's, I guess, taking it, something that's gone for 3.5 minutes and fleshing it out to almost 2 hours is kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there have been other, I can't think of immediately offhand, but some of your listeners will, where other songs have been done the same thing.
Coward of the County.
Yeah.
Convoy,
yep.
I was thinking something that was slightly more musical, such as the song which I think, Stillwater, one of the Paul Kelly songs that became the movie Jindabyne.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The one where they go fishing and they find a dead body in the water and they decide to stay fishing. So it must be something to do with Paul Kelly.
So that was a perfect segue into my next question, David. And I love a good
It's almost like
mini-series.
we planned it and we didn't.
We didn't. I love a good mini-series, and they got to come from someone's thought process. Is there a movie in any of your books?
Wow, yeah, I think there's a movie or a mini-series in all of them, but I haven't had them made into, which is a really great disappointment for me.
But is there one that, in amongst it, you probably watch other television crime show, either movies or mini-series type things? Is there any of them that you're bold enough to say, well, hang on, this one really stands out amongst all the other things I've written, this one could be a great television show?
Yeah, well, I'd say two. River of Salt, the one I mentioned, I think that could be a great TV series. I originally conceived it when I had the big idea for it. I thought, it'd be a great TV series. And then knowing how hard it is to get a TV series up, I decided I'd write it as a book and then see, what might happen after that. And the other one is Big Bad Blood, one of the second ones I wrote, which is a really big involved crime novel that I think would be a great, James Alloy type of conversion to screen. So I think those two in particular, but now that I've got a series of books with some of my characters there, you also have the option, if someone was interested, they could do telemovies of those and have, a series of either 1 or 2 part telemovies or, 3 or 4 part, however. But, I think most of the stuff, I've spent a lot of time as a screenwriter. I've spent 10 years or 12 years doing that, and so I do tend to, I think that helps my novel writing a lot and my structure, and so I tend to think through my books in a lot of ways that as a screenwriter would, and that expand them, and so I think that would help convert them. So there's not novels are really or literary novels are hard to convert because there's so much internal thinking on the part of the character. You've got to try and work out how to do that, whereas I think genre is a lot easier because you've got the plot there.
Yeah, I'm trying desperately to think of the title of the last one of yours that I read. I'm going to say River of Dreams, would that be right?
River of Salt, perhaps, yeah.
No, it's set in Freo.
Oh, set in Freo, okay, it's City of Light.
There you go, I was close.
Yeah.
I had the City of, give me 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as the great Meatloaf once said. No, I just got the of, didn't I? I didn't get either of the other 2 words, that's okay. The thing I most liked about that book, and I don't read books very much, but I got through that one, was that I've been to Freo probably half a dozen times, and the way you wrote it, I could see how it was working in Freo. And therefore, I reckon that's why it would be something like that could be made into a telemovie, because you've almost even outlined the locations and all that kind of stuff. Whereas these books that are written for Harry Potter and all these sorts of things that are set in some kind of fantasy world, I don't get it.
Yeah, well, look, we all have different tastes, which is great. I normally don't get into science fiction, but then I wouldn't mind having the success of Harry Potter. That would be...
Yeah, when I wrote Star Wars the first time, and then they asked me... No, they didn't.
You'd have to change your brand if you wrote a successful Harry Potter. You couldn't be a suburban boy anymore. You'd have to be something else. You'd probably be the Northern Beaches boy then.
Well, you could do what you like then. If you're Harry Potter, we could...
You have to become J.K. Warner instead.
If he's spot in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you can find... The problem is, like the music industry in Australia, where the Spotifys and YouTubes are probably killing the opportunity for youngsters to make a reasonable living. It seems that we have become very lazy in the Australian movie and television industry compared to we were in the old days, where some great characters got to develop their skills and go on to be great things, but we're not making too much of that type of stuff anymore, it seems.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of... Look, I'm an oldie and old fogey and stuff, but I do think there's a lot of reasons that things get made these days, like to get support from various arts bodies and things. It's not necessarily about the story anymore, it's about the boxes that you tick. And that doesn't necessarily make for wonderful drama, And so I think that's a real problem, and hope that at some stage gets addressed and it goes back to being, well, this is a good story, let's make it,
Because I think there's some stuff that you see on the subscription TV channels that I tend to think of as sort of microwave TV. Put it in the microwave for 2.5 minutes, bang, out it comes the other end. Great opportunity for people to cut their teeth and learn like the old soap operas were, but not really the sort of stuff that someone who's a sensible actor is going to necessarily sink their teeth into.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've always that has mystified me a bit, and I've always felt a bit envious of Denmark. From the last 15 years, I looked at their movies, and particularly the genre thriller things, and they're so good. The writing is so good, the acting is so good, plots are so good, and we so rarely manage to achieve that level.
Yeah, in the middle of one at the moment, Dave, and I concur. We've watched a lot of those, and while the subtitles in some are a little difficult, it's well worth it because you're totally enthralled. It's what I like most about it, and I haven't read your book, but I hope you're writing along the lines, is the script is actually very believable and understandable. It doesn't go off on these weird tangents. That's I think their attention to detail is really, really important to make it a believable and understandable following, and they certainly do their television very well.
Yeah, they do, and I always say that I think veracity is incredibly important in books, and veracity doesn't mean that, in my opinion, and when I say veracity, I don't mean that everything has to be exactly as it is in the real world. I just mean that you have to believe it. You have to believe that even in science fiction, you have to believe that those characters would do what they would do, or that this would happen, and not that. Well, yeah, let's get the story through and let's...
Yeah, a lot of the American-y garbage is there's just something happens when you're enthralled with what's going on. There's a piece of evidence will magically appear from nowhere and you just immediately go, oh, no, that's just spoilt the whole thing. It gets very, very frustrating.
And that's where the City of Light thing is really believable in terms of you can imagine yourself there and it's not out of the question.
Yeah, when you've lived it yourself.
And I tell you what, Dave, you should have seen the look on Rob's face when you started talking about Danish movies. He went somewhere totally different, and I've just had to bring him back. We are thrilled that you are coming to Victoria. Sad that you're not making it down the Princess Highway a little further, but that's okay. You are going to be at George Lane. Now, George Lane, we hasten to point out, is a venue. It's not the bloke who's playing guitar. Is that correct?
That's right. It's a venue in St Kilda.
Yes, funnily enough, it's in George Lane, St Kilda, funnily enough. And thanks for missing my great joke about George Lane being a guitarist. You're going to be down here on Friday the 28th of March, which is about 5 weeks away, 6 weeks away, something like that.
Yep.
And you can get multiple ticket prices, it says here on Try Booking, which is where I'm reading from. This is what it says, Rob. Suburban legend Dave Warner of From the Suburbs fame takes on an up-close and personal journey through his 5 decades of music, writing and astute social commentary. Fancy having someone with astute social commentary on our program. During this special show, joined by special guest and partner in crime Tony Durant with the promise of some special guests, Dave will trace his musical journey from his initial exploits with Perth punk band Puss, and for the person who told me the other day that the band was called Puss, wrong, through his dominance in cult heroics of the Australian pub scene with the From Suburbs, into his forays into a solo career, cabaret, poetry and crime writing fiction. In his own words, expect the unexpected as he trawls his extensive vault for music and literary gems. It promises to be a memorable afternoon, particularly given it starts at 7 p.m. I would have thought that's a memorable evening.
Extremely, yeah.
Dave, people can get tickets still. I'm surprised that that is the case. This show is officially called Dave Warner From the Suburbs Holds Court. But if you are going to be in Castlemaine, not Castlemaine or any of the other places like Shep, check your local guides. But I would have thought that this would be a bit of a hoot getting along to it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of tickets have gone, but I think there's still some
limited numbers.
St Kilda one, and hopefully in Castlemaine at the Northern Arts Hotel.
Well done.
Got tickets, and at Creswick at the
I forgot about Creswick. Yes, because Creswick's not very far from Geelong either. So if you want sort of a metro venue, you can nick up to George Lane in St Kilda. That's only an hour up the road, or you can head over to Creswick, just the other side of Ballarat.
Hour and a half, you'd be in Creswick.
Yep, and a lovely little place. Dave, it is always good fun to catch up with you. I was just doing some research, and I know that's an unusual thing for this program. The last time we spoke to you on the wireless here was the 20th of May 2020.
Is it? Oh, it can't be that long ago.
It is that long ago. So,
Really?
Yeah, that's what it said. Well, I'm doing the research, so it's probably wrong. But I do need to congratulate you because now that you've been on twice, you are now officially a friend of the show.
Oh, fabulous.
Now, you were just a mate before, but now you're a friend.
Oh, do I get a little button in the post or anything?
Settle down,
Just
Dave.
check your mailbox. You never know what might turn up.
Don't get ahead of yourself, Dave.
Dave, it's always good fun to have a chat to you, and look forward to catching up for that cold drink on a warm afternoon with you at some stage. I'll even bring Rob and show him where the Northern Beaches are.
Yeah, so much, and you're always welcome.
Thanks,
mate.
Dave.
Great to chat.
Really appreciate it. Best wishes.
Take care.
See you, mate. Dave Warner there from the suburbs, or indeed from the Northern Beaches these days.